let's go ahead and do your introduction for people who don't know who you are. Matthew Rosewater. Is that how I say your last name correctly, Rosewater?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Rosewater. I am a completion process practitioner trained by Teal Swan to help facilitate shadow work, inner child work. I do parts work with people. I do some intuitive work. I've been playing in the realm of also helping people manifest, which is another passion of mine. And doing this kind of work and doing shadow work myself, it's like we always come into, I think, even deeper layers of what really we went through as a child as we're going through and healing. I feel like we have to really like uncover things in layers, and we don't even know what else is under there until we kind of really excavate and dig our way down and really see even more so, you know, what's happening in that subconscious. So something for me recently that came up that was really huge, probably the biggest realization I've had in a while, was coming to terms with the fact that I am enmeshed or have gone through what we call enmeshment trauma. And I spoke with Antoine here a bit about it because I made a public post about it too, for many reasons. Like, part of me just really wanted to share such a huge revelation with people. I wanted other people to know about it as well, but then part of me just really wanted to be seen in it as well. So that kind of really facilitated this meeting today. And I think it's important for us to be able to share our own authentic truth, and not only like the ups, but also the downs and the things that we're also working on as well. So I think it kind of gives people permission to also know that it's okay to be going through these things, and maybe even help make sense of it a little bit more.
Yes.
So thank you so much for arranging this, Antoine.
Absolutely. For everyone that's going to be watching this, we're solely going to be talking about enmeshment trauma. We're going to be talking about it from the lens of my questions. So the questions that I'm going to be asking are going to be purely in an organic way of just not knowing at all. I have not done any reading on this. I have not done any work on this or any studying. And as Matthew is going through his processes of uncovering his own enmeshment, he's going to be sharing what he's experiencing, what he's finding, and a little bit of precursor to how things were before even discovering. And that's kind of the format we're setting up. We have about 5 questions we're going to go through. Matthew's going to answer them. I'm going to be asking them. So I'm going to be interviewing Matthew, and we just really want to shed light and bring the awareness that it's okay. Well, 100% it's okay to be vulnerable, because that's literally what the first thing that me and Matthew, I feel, are doing right now. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. The first question, which is, what is your definition of enmeshment trauma? Your specific definition, not from a book or anything, but what do you feel it really means, Matthew?
Yeah, so I think it means many things, but I think what it really comes down to is just not having a solid sense of self around other people. And that means many things. So the way that I really came into this knowledge was through a video that Teal Swan, a spiritual teacher, had made. And it was a video titled something very provocative that I think is a really great video. It's like, do you need personal space, as in alone time? If so, you are being inauthentic. And I had seen that video before, and I had watched all the way through, but I must have been like dissociated, or who the hell knows what I was doing at the time I actually watched it, because when I rewatched it again recently, it was as if I was watching it again for the very first time. And in that video, the concept is introduced, and it really was what opened my eyes up to this. So through that video, I got to understand it more, and then also realize, like, whoa, this applies to my life so hard. And what I've come to understand is it's not having a sense of self around other people, but the way that that's set up is basically in childhood, of course, where like all of our crappy stuff comes from, right?
Yeah.
It's where your parents, when they had you, they basically assumed you as the child to be an extension of themselves. Yes. So they identify, you know, through you as a part of them, and not seeing the child or you or me as, you know, our own individual person, our own individual soul that came here with our own destiny and our own purpose and our own needs and our own likes and our own dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, we were seen more so as like raw material to be molded into whatever the hell they want for us and think is
Right.
best for us, and not attuning at all. We weren't, I'm going to say we as anyone else who's also identifying with this, we weren't allowed to have really many of our own desires, our own feelings, our own needs, our own perspectives or unique thoughts, because there were consequences for that. It didn't identify with what the parent wanted for you or wanted you to be. So to get really vulnerable, like more personal about my own life, like I grew up with a father that is a military father.
Oh,
And I mean, we can go into stereotypes with that one, like
that hits such a chord like that. There's a genre for that. Like it's like a real thing. It's not a taboo. Military brat, military dad. Like it has its own culture.
yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sure people can already begin to wonder what that's like, but like the main components of that is like, my father wanted me to be a specific way. So because I was born the male gender, I was already assumed to have particular roles and expectations within his idea of what I was to become. So what that was like this kid that's just like super into sports and is a jock and does hard work and all these kinds of things. And that was just not at all who I was. So anything that I identified with that was basically not even just those things, but anything that was just not those things that he had laid out for me to become, there were consequences for. So you don't actually get to form your identity or your concept of yourself because of it. So what ends up happening is many things, and we can talk more about like how it's affected me or what I've done so far with this understanding, but that's essentially what it is. It's like, you just aren't able to be yourself around other people because you don't even know who you are to begin with. You weren't allowed to have like boundaries or any authentic truth to be shared with anybody. You just took on like a chameleon, whatever other people wanted for you.
Yeah. So basically, if you have a parent that does a certain specific task, whether it be a job or they think they're good at or they're really good at, and then when they have their children, and then they, you know, for example, let's say a lineage of like people or families that are into trains or work on trains or things like that, and then they have children and then they start like buying them train sets and like getting them training like clothes and like showing them what a train is. And before that kid has a chance to formulate their own idea, they're being enmeshed in the lifestyle and what it means to be in with trains. And maybe they don't want to work on trains, like maybe they don't want to go to the military. Absolutely. So that's what it is. And I can relate to that because my dad was really into baseball, and I was on a little league baseball team or whatever. And it hit me when I was out in the field on a hot sunny day and I have really bad allergies, trying to catch just this little white ball that's invisible when it goes in the air. And I'm just looking in the field like, what am I doing here? This is not cool. And so I feel that. And then my mom, I think she would make me feel bad because she would say, well, your dad really likes it when you play baseball. Is that kind of it too, the shaming? Okay.
Pretty much. That's pretty much what it is.
Both my parents were like working towards a goal and they were backing each other up, and I didn't have anyone. Like it was just
no one was in your corner, like fighting for your own best interests.
Yeah. And like, I want to make my parents happy. So I'm going to play baseball, when in fact, when I'm out there, I don't really know why I'm doing it. That's
a whole other layer of it for sure.
It feels good when they're happy, but when I don't know what I'm doing, that doesn't feel good. So
and when that's your reality every single day in childhood, you never have that opportunity.
Right.
It goes what's right for you or what you like or what's, you know, in your best interest, because nobody else is actually paying attention to what those are. So you don't even pay attention to your own anymore.
Yeah, it goes right into what I believe is that we're in a generation where we're starting to realize that we were shaped after we were created. We never had a chance to even shape our own. One movie comes to mind is Adam Sandler when he was playing the dad, and
yes,
right, and the kid wanted to wear the raincoat to school and like all the stuff, and he just let him.
Yeah.
those are pivotal moments where you choose what you want to do as a kid, no matter how crazy it might seem. You know, if you have parents like that, it's probably a little bit more healthier. Anyways, so the next question I have here is, in what way do you feel enmeshment trauma has affected you negatively? From that time moving forward, how negative did it get? How bad did it get?
Oh God, how much time do we have? Okay. So, well, let's break it down of what it really looks like, right? Like in my life in this moment. So it's like, as soon as somebody enters the room or you're in connection with somebody, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you don't, now I'm conscious of it, but before I wasn't, I would immediately and continue sometimes to abandon myself immediately and make myself into something that's going to please that person and cater to their needs. So something that is really common among people that have been enmeshed is they have this ability to hyper attune to people. And what attunement really is really like feeling into that person to know what it is that they need. Well, we developed a really, really strong ability to do this because our safety depended upon it. It's quite literally what we needed to do to survive. So what I'll do is try to create connection with anyone that is coming into my space by essentially anticipating their reaction to anything that I say or do, so that I can ensure a positive reaction instead of a negative one, even if it violates my own boundaries.
It's like an ulterior motive.
Yeah, essentially. And half the time, well, most of my life, like this is the craziest part. Yeah. Like most of my life, I had no idea this was happening. It was just happening on autopilot subconsciously.
We talked about
now that I have awareness, I'm watching this. But yeah, like this is the most painful part of it is the price for connection, which is a basic human need.
Ooh, so good.
Is to lose myself. The price for connection is to lose myself.
That's like extreme self-sacrificing. That's like disassociation, disconnecting. Like
it's the worst kind of tug of war you can be in, where it feels like your entire body's being ripped from both ends in half, because like so much of your being wants and needs that connection, but the other part of you perceives it as a threat.
Right, but you've been told that you can't be there. The real you can't be there to receive it.
Because you don't even know who the real you is because of it. That's the scariest part. You can't even you can't even hang on to that. And that's also part of it too, because like when you have enmeshment, you feel like you're being consumed or absorbed by the people around you, where you lose like your free will. You're constantly going back and forth between like pushing people away and trying to bring them closer. It's like a rubber band, that Teal calls it, like the rubber band effect. Right. You're never finding like a happy medium where you're like allowing everybody in fully. Because it's a perceived threat of being absorbed by them or bleeding out into the room and not actually having yourself contained around other people. So this actually is perceived by my being as a threat, mostly subconsciously so far. So that person is not being able to learn anything about me or my reality in that process. Only the proper mask or the right shifting of the chameleon to appeal to that particular person. That's the only part of me that they're getting to see and get to know. Right. So
is that
a part really difficult.
Is that a part of you that's with you when you're by yourself?
That's the perfect thing to talk about next, actually, because the only reason that people with enmeshment trauma need and depend on their alone time like nothing else. People with enmeshment trauma really, really need a higher degree of alone time because it's not safe for them to be authentic around people. So the only way that you can like feel yourself or know what you're thinking or know what you want is when you are by yourself, because that's when you're actually being able to focus on what you're thinking about. Whereas when you're in a room with somebody else, you have no access to that whatsoever. You can't feel yourself. Right. So what's essentially happening is we're requiring so much more alone time because that's the only time that we can know what we want. Everything else goes out the window around other people. So that's the most painful part of it. It's like we need connection, but yet we need all this alone time because connection is the threat.
Wow. Yeah, that's just totally like negative on top of negative, It's just very lonely.
Yeah,
'Cause
very
you're
much
definitely
so.
not yourself. You're definitely not yourself when you're around people. Oh man. Yeah. Oh man. Okay,
It
so
is the problem.
yeah, I know so many people that can relate to that. Let's go to the third question. Um, can enmeshment trauma be used to identify other traumas?
Oh yeah. Oh, I found so much uncovering this one. Um, well, I think like the first thing that happens, okay, so I guess I'll just talk about like my progression with this realization. It's where I am. That'll make a lot more sense, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first learned that this was the case, like first of all, I had all these separate little symptoms of enmeshment trauma all over the place that I just didn't know where to place or what to do with collectively. I thought like each thing was its own root, but it all seems to just kind of really funnel into this one root of enmeshment. And when I came into the realization, like ultimate freeze state for me, like coming into that knowledge was just like, what do I do? I feel like there's nowhere to move. Because it's like being in the observer now of that tug of war that's going on internally. It's like, well, how do I do anything about this? Because one half of you is being pulled up here in the direction of connection, the other half of you is being pulled down here to be alone because you don't know anything about yourself if you have connection. So just coming into that awareness is like its own trauma because you have to sit there and become keen to like what's happening internally. And that just to me felt like super powerless. I didn't even know where to begin with it at first. So I think like letting yourself feel, and it's going to be different for everybody that comes into this, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
letting yourself just be with whatever comes up during that realization. If you're having that realization right now, listening to Antoine and I talk, like I invite you to pause the video and just identify what's coming up within you. And just be in that first layer. Everything's going to reveal itself in time. But for me, what happened next really was also the beginning of a grief process. And I'm still in it, to be honest. I think grief is one of those things where it's like, you don't go into it and then in one shot of a session of some sort, you're through it. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I wish it did. But grief kind of comes in waves. And what's being grieved over is the loss of not having my sense of self. And also the fact that I wasn't loved in the way that I needed to be or at all, if you really go by the real definition of what love is. And just like really mourning the fact that like this has been my reality up until now.
Right. So who you were before finding out how enmeshed you were, who you were was just an assimilation of kind of survival through society and friends and stuff, what worked. But in essence, it wasn't like the Matthew that doesn't work and doesn't get along and maybe has an attitude or maybe doesn't like this or that. That Matthew, where was he when all this was going on? The Matthew that didn't work.
That's a great question. So I haven't, this has been maybe a couple weeks now that all this has happened and been unearthed. I don't know the answer to that question, to be very honest with you. I haven't found that out yet. I'm assuming he's in there somewhere, but I'm still yet to meet him and to get to know him.
Do you feel him sometimes? Do you feel parts of you on the inside that are totally against you putting up the best of you all the time for other people? You feel that?
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. And I think the more that I look into this and do some deeper diving, the more apparent and the louder the voice gets in that way, where it's just like, we need to stop doing this. Like, we cannot do this. It's like the feeling of running on fumes almost.
Yeah. Do you feel the do you feel any impendingness or burning desire inside, like an energy wave of change a change needs to happen? Or is it more of like a slow, like it'll change on its own, like it's not that immediate? I'm just curious.
That's a good question. I want to say it's both.
Okay.
At different intervals of the day. It's all kinds of things. And that's also really difficult. And for me specifically, because like I'm such like a fast track, like wanting to get things done, like move through things really quickly. But the lesson I'm being presented is this was an entire lifelong thing, Matthew. You need to rewrite your lifestyle and the way that you live in order to change this. And this isn't something that you just read a book on and A to Z overnight. You're a different person without it. You know, it doesn't work that way. much as I wish it did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's both. Like, it's going to take time, and it will, the more, and that's the thing with doing this type of work. When you do work in the subconscious field, like, things cannot help but shift as a result of it, because you're changing your vibe, you're changing your point of attraction, you're integrating parts of your being. But also it's going to take like your own conscious effort as well, and taking different action steps and trying different things.
Right.
So there's two main things that I've, whittled it down to needing to work on. Number one is stronger boundaries, because what a boundary is a sense of self. So if I don't even know who I am, then that's a call for me to know that I need to have more boundaries and to understand myself at a deeper level. So it's funny, because before coming into all this, I'm like, oh, I'm really good at boundaries. But sometimes things can just show up and like knock the Jenga tower down, and it's like, okay, we got to build this all over again. Like,
right. Yeah.
Stronger.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the other is just being more authentic, because obviously nobody gets to know the real me, and that's painful, right? Like, you can only be loved to the degree that people know you.
Yeah.
And there's so many parts of me that people just don't know about. And that's really painful for me. So a part of this recovery, I guess you can call it, right, is going to be being more mindful and conscious of how much vulnerability I get to share in my conversations, and doing so much more like observation. So like being in the observer self during interactions, and really getting in like to the somatic experience of it all too. Cause like I've been noticing now that I'm paying a lot more attention, like I notice different feelings in my body come up when somebody comes in the room, or I'm passing somebody or whatever it is. And then just watching how I react, and then watching how much I contain of myself versus share of myself. And making that more of a mindful practice as well. Because it's always been the case, and it's still not like massively different quite yet. I'm still in the like realization, observing, just digesting, if anything, type of phase with all of it. But like, I always get to know so much about other people when I interact with them, but I feel like nobody really gets to know much about me at all.
Right.
I'm just the person that's the easiest person in the world to be around because of this trauma. So that's one thing. It's like anyone that's enmeshed, I'm sure it's quite easy to be around, and can get along with quite literally anybody, because we're so hyper attuned to make sure of it. So part of that like difficulty also is going to be developing boundaries, in the sense that like now I'm going to be risking people not, meshing well with that. Or, conflict for someone like us is also very difficult. We want to run away from it or avoid it at all costs. So me having boundaries now puts me in the territory of potential conflict, which I know now, like, that gives us the opportunity to have a conflict resolution. But the thought of that is still, extremely frightening and full of terror for me. But that's just a part of it, and really getting into the space of accepting it for what it is. Like, this is the reality, not denying it or running away from it, just like literally being in this moment, like with it, has been a hard part. But I think that's kind of what I've worked on the most so far, is just the acceptance.
Yeah, those two tools that you spoke of, I think when I think of it, I think of, little Matthew building and having so many tools that gets you through so many things, and just yes, and very proper and very like and all that great stuff. It's just that those tools started becoming the tools started to become a wall, its own wall, and you didn't even, some of the tools you had in that wall you didn't even need anymore. It just became its own wall, and now you're turning around to the other side, and you're trying to build 2 other tools, but that's it. Like, not a million, just 2. And I think that's great, because that's kind of like a purging of tools in a way, and that's like what you start with. You don't need all these crazy society tools where it's like, don't show that you're not happy when somebody enters the room. Make sure you greet them, and like all this weird stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I greet people and stuff like that, but I'm not like, I don't put so much thought into it. And some people honestly will tell me like, dude, that's, you're kind of being rude. And Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of living, is sometimes you're rude. That's
Mm-hmm.
me being a human, you know what I mean? So
Totally. And part of me is like, oh God, that's frightening as
yeah,
hell,
that's
but like
frightening,
also
right?
inspiring in a way, because like it just to this point hasn't occurred to me that that's even an option
Yeah.
to like consider myself or on other people. It never has.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you know, because we were friends before we did this interview, and we've spoke on different occasions, but I've always wanted to tell you there is a side of you that I've never gotten to see that I wanted to see. But this is a thought that I've had, that just because I didn't know where our boundaries are as friends were, so I didn't know how to say it. I knew what I wanted to say. I didn't know how to say it, and I didn't know if there was a right time to say it. And I've always wanted to tell you that, is like, I want to see, you know, I got the great, you know, Matthew that's very nice and kind, and yes, but I want the Matthew I can turn to and say, that person was like extremely rude. Did you see how they, you know, instead of you saying like, oh, well, they probably just had a bad day. Like, that's, yes, Matthew, I get that. But what do you really think? Tell me, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I wanted. And I'm glad that you're getting closer and closer to that place. Cause after this and moving forward, I want to be, a safe person for you to divulge information like that, and realize that you have the space to be that side of you that is non-agreeable all the time and doesn't have the right answer, and have me be a safe person for you to be like, oh, I don't get judged or shot down for being that way, you know?
Oh, yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I appreciate that. And that's like the beauty of, I think, where I am. Like, I can really find gratitude, not that I'm like need to, but like it's easy to find gratitude for friends like you and the friends that I have, because it's like, when you come into this kind of trauma, you need to practice these things with people. This is all about people. This is all about relationships, right? So if I didn't have people that were in my life that felt safe to practice boundaries with, or to feel safe to be authentic with, like, I'd really be in an even harder position than I am. So I feel for so many people that might not feel that they even have that to begin this recovery process with. Like,
they're just
intense.
like have a whole family around them that like they're enmeshed with, and you know, they
probably still live with them. I mean, that's the hardest part too. It's like you're living with the source of where it all came from. And I remember Teal saying one time, like, oh, when you think you're enlightened, like, try go living with your parents for a week and see if you still feel like you're in that state. And see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like you should never live with your parents, or you shouldn't have relationships with your parents. Like, nothing shameful like that at all. It's just not easy. It is not easy, especially when you're coming into big paradigm shifts and big levels of awareness about what you're going through that has negatively affected your life and currently still is, while living with those particular people that, you know, facilitated that to happen for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to go ahead and move on to the fourth question. You ready for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what were some of the defining moments that brought enmeshment trauma into your life? And instead of talking about broad strokes, I think it would, as comfortable as you are with it, Matthew, sharing with us very specific moments that you felt the tear and the rip to memory of the enmeshment, how bad it was.
Yeah. Do you mean like in childhood or present moment?
Whatever you're comfortable with sharing. Could be childhood or could be present moment where you felt the enmeshment like taking over. You know, bring us to that memory. I kind of want to feel it. But again, if you don't want to, whatever you're willing to share, we could probably, if you want to do like 3 memories, or maybe you don't have any, or 2 or 1. Yeah.
Okay, let me think of some examples.
Yeah.
I mean, this is literally something that takes place on a spectrum, no matter who I'm with, anyone, whether I know them or not. Like, there's going to be this happening to some degree. I think like the biggest part of it, like the hardest part for me is like really being able to feel anything about myself around other people, especially if the people that I'm with are like big personalities or big energy or very, you know, solid in their own boundaries, because like they know everything about who they are. And because I'm catered to that particular individual, like I know nothing about me. I know that's very general, not a specific example, but it's hard to give like one thing because it's like every day, every interaction, they're all so similar from what I'm observing.
How about when you were depleted of energy because of the enmeshment? You were so enmeshed in the group or a person or whatever, not the specific person. We don't have to name anyone, but a time when you remember being depleted of energy or yourself, where it was really bad. Do you have any memories like that?
Depleted of energy. I mean, I can think of many times I was depleted of energy, but like specific to that, I don't really know. It's a tough one to like pinpoint like specific moments, I feel like, because it's something that would take place in childhood on a daily basis throughout the day, through the entirety of the childhood. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, this one incident happened, which therefore set forth this dynamic, which is true of other things.
Right.
But with this one, it's quite literally a lifestyle that brings it about from the moment I was conceived. So there's literally not a moment that doesn't apply to it. So it's not like defining moments for this, unfortunately. I wish it were, because then those are like main, you know, points I can go in and do some trauma resolution work on. And I'm going to, and I have been. And there are things that do come up. Like, for example, I would always be, as a child, like super immersed in video games. Like that was my world. And because I think a lot of it too was like me just like projecting into a fantasy world was easier than coping with reality. But that wasn't received well. That wasn't, you know, part of the mold I was supposed to fit. That wasn't me being an accurate and, you know, good and proper extension of my caregivers, right? So that was always met with resistance. I was always told I should be out playing outside instead. Why don't I have enough friends to do that with? Like I would be shamed for all kinds of things. And then that in and of itself, like just teaches me and tells me that what I'm doing is wrong and that my interests are incorrect.
Did you get shamed a lot to make more friends?
Yes. There were moments where that happened.
Wow.
Many, actually.
So that's where possibly some of the tools were built to make friends and people please.
Probably. I mean, a lot of it too was the rest of my family as well, not even just like where I live, because like I was always known as like the good little boy that causes no problems or trouble. So I feel like I was given that pressure and had to live up to that. So I think that's like an extension of the enmeshment as well, as always having to be the child that caused no problems ever. To maintain that level of significance and love within the family. Right. What were you going to say?
Did you ever hear your family refer to you? You know how people talk about you and then you're like, they talk about you with someone else, but you're still right there. Did they ever refer to you as like such the good little boy while you were in the room?
Oh, constantly.
And not even talking to you, just like talking about
it. And it was always reaffirmed to me all the time. Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Oh man.
That was my given persona, and you know, that I had to live up to. And it develops all kinds of things. It develops the enmeshment trauma. It develops also your, you know, attachment style within relationships as well.
Right.
So, which for me, that easily makes me on the avoidant end of the spectrum, because I need so much alone time and I'm pushing people away. So that goes hand in hand with, you know, attachment styles of relationships, because I want and need connection, but it's unsafe to allow people into my emotional core. So I feel like I have to retreat or keep people at arm's length just to feel a sense of myself. And, you know, the parents for me were more emotionally unavailable or unresponsive to the things that I needed or felt at the time. So I think that really also sets me up for premature independence, or what we sometimes call like the parentified child that had so much responsibility to take care of themselves because nobody else did. So that also, I feel like, can sometimes stem off of that. And that's kind of going back to that question about like what other trauma comes up with this. Well, there's so much.
There's so much, yeah.
I can even name another, like that's a big one in my life right now that I'm really conscious of now, is the concept of, for me, getting love via accomplishments.
Yeah.
So that was another part of being the good little Matthew, was he had to get good grades and do really, really, really well in school. And if I didn't do those things, then there was no such thing as positive attention or even being noticed. So that's a dynamic that has completely stayed with me. And even so, with writing a post on Facebook about enmeshment trauma, I realized after the fact that like, I just put all this pressure on myself, because now I feel like, because I talked about an issue that I have, that I need to go and accomplish it in order to get love from people. So now that I feel like I've got this like grand task that I need to excel at and get 100 on my report card and show it to everybody. And until I can do that, nobody's going to love me. I'm unlovable. I won't be noticed. I'll be invisible. So that was literally a pressure that came up shortly after me writing that post as well. It's like, well, now I feel like I've got this immense stress and, you know, a level of pressure on me, self-imposed, because nobody's going to love me unless I figure this out. So that's like a whole other part of it too, for me individually. I'm not sure if everybody has that, and I hope nobody else does. I don't want anybody else to have to deal with that, but that's the truth of my reality.
Well, one thing for sure that I know for a fact, being in Teal Tribe and being a part of the community, seeing people go through all their different traumas and things, as people go through it, they have the best advice to give. I'm always wary now when I meet people that are, you know, they say they're spiritual or they're enlightened or whatever, and they're like, I've been through this, this, and this, and this. What do you want to talk about? Like, how can I help you? And it's like, whoa, wait a second. Like, the best healers, in my opinion, are the people that are going through what they're trying to heal.
And the best healers too are ones that can be with you exactly as you are and not need you to be any different. The ones that aren't approaching you from the, I need to fix you. What's wrong with you? Here are my ways that I can, you know, do these things to change you. Hell no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The enmeshment is going to be, you know, it's going to be a thing for you. And I feel like you're going to change one way or the other, but it may not be what you expect it to be, but it will definitely be what the universe knows is the best for you.
So. Oh yeah. I'm so open to however that needs to take place. And I'm already seeing it take place in many ways. So of course it's going to be like my own inner work, my own process, my own, you know, trial and error with relationships and having those safe people to do that with. But it's also with the line of work that I do in helping people through session work with clients. Like, since making that post, I've had people see it that are like, oh my God, like, I want to work on that too. And I've been able to work with clients already since that post on this particular issue. And it depends on where everyone's belief systems lie, but I definitely believe in oneness to the degree where when I'm helping somebody else also with this issue, I am essentially helping me. We're helping the collective with it. So I'm also tackling different angles of it for me through other people, which has been really cool and fun to witness. It's amazing, like how the law of attraction will bring you the right clients that you need. You need each other for that. So that's another way that I'm finding that I'm getting through deeper layers of this too, which that's a pretty cool way to do it, I think.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely how it works. Like Julia has this quote that she says about you help yourself through helping other people, you know.
Yes, always.
And yeah, it's pretty amazing how that works. And I'm so glad that people are reaching out to you since that post, because it was a very long post. I know it took a lot of time to write, but super informative. And it just left me with questions, you know, because it was the first time that I've heard of it. So thanks for writing that. I really liked it. And then we've already talked about this, of course, because these are very baseline questions. But the last question is, where are you in processing enmeshment trauma? I know you've kind of answered it, but if you could put it in terms of like your awareness, how much from the time that you realize, you know, that you have enmeshment trauma in a deep way, how much more aware of it are you, or are you still blended? And this might raise a good point, actually, to the point where let's put it in a scenario. Like, if I was with you and me and you were at a place where me and you were talking and engaging with people, and we, you know, people we know, whatever. And then I turn to you and I say, I literally check in with you, you know, and I pull you aside and I look you in the eyes and I say, Matthew, are you okay right now? Do you feel like you have to leave? You know, are you hungry, or how are you doing right now? What Matthew of the enmeshment process would I get right now?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Okay. Let's see. Matthew in this moment feels very tired. It's been a long day for me. I also did a lot of exercise today because I got new shoes that I wanted to break in. Matthew in this moment is unsure if the video froze. Are we still here? Uh-oh. Hello? Are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay,
You
did that cut out for you?
No, it was, if you saw what I saw, it was you, and then you were in slow motion speaking, and you were saying, it's been a long day. Like, that's how you.
Oh, I wish I got that. No.
It was great. I was listening, I was like, long day. So,
my inner like exhaustion was like taking over the technology.
yeah. So repeat that. Yeah. If I was to check in with you right now. And what I mean is, what Matthew would I get, because you're observant now, right? You've got a little bit more like what Matthew is where, you know,
Yeah.
taking it all in. So what I'm saying is, if I said that to you, do you think that I would get the Matthew that would say, no, I'm fine, like everything's fine? Or would you let me know that so-and-so bothered you, you want to leave right now, you know, scenario wise?
If you wouldn't have prefaced it in the way that you did, you probably would have gotten the I'm fine, Matthew. But because of how you worded that and checked in that way, I probably will say more. So I guess like the Matthew right now definitely feels a bit of anxiety. I still feel that pressure actually coming up. Like I experience pressure quite a bit in my chest as like this like caving in kind of sensation.
I know what that
so
feels like.
yeah, so much of me right now is really worrying how this is going to be, you know, relayed to other people. Are people going to get it? Part of me also feels like having shadows and pain is a deterrent for people wanting to work with me. That's a shadow coming up for me right now. And just, you know, being seen in it and feeling like people actually genuinely want to see this. Like part of me is worried that this is going to get like 3 views on YouTube.
Oh my God. This is for you. This is for you. I love you. Like, this is
I love you too.
You know what I mean? And I'm thinking about that too, right? Like I am.
Mm-hmm.
But like the first 10 minutes of the video, like I'm not trying to correct you. I'm just trying to share what's in my heart. From the first 10 minutes, I was thinking about that. All that went away because I really started to understand, like you explained it really well. Like it's going to be easily received. You know what I mean? And like, this is, I see you. Like I really see you. I see enmeshment. I'm there with you as you grew up. Like you really explained it really well. And I feel like this is for you. Like we talked about this as the baseline. Like this is 100% more going to be for your growth rather than how many views, who gets received, who gets called to do a session. Like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, those are just the legit things running through my head. And they might not make a whole lot of sense, but they're definitely there.
No, I hear you.
But I agree with the things that you said too. I mean, this is the most comprehensive thing I've seen put together on this topic. So I'm very grateful that this is a thing, and it will be good for me because like, it'll be good to have this all organized into one space. And also I love having stuff like this because like when you do progress into different levels, you get to go back and watch these things and be like, whoa,
right?
Like look at the difference from where I'm at now. Like my future self's looking back at this, watching this being like, holy shit, like remember back when we were here? You know what I mean? So it's also really cool to like have this as like an anchor point or a milestone. But yeah, those are probably the main things coming up in my body at this moment in terms of my reality. But I'm also looking forward to working more on this too, and also like helping other people to know that it even exists, and hopefully clear up any kind of like misconceptions, or maybe people don't even know what it is at all, and they've heard the word like I have tossed around on the internet. So, that's my hope and my wish.
I have no doubt that that's going to be exactly, you know, what's going to be received and how people are going to receive it. I think that we covered a lot of ground on enmeshment, and the first question was your definition. You gave a great definition, you know, of what enmeshment means to you. And I just want to reiterate that I don't want to invalidate your feelings of anxiety or your feelings in your chest. I don't want to invalidate that at all. I understand how it feels. I just wanted to give you some reassurance on, you know, the person that you're talking to. Like, I, you know, care about you first before I care about, like, you know, those things. I just want you to know that. That's all. But I totally understand. Yeah.
That completely comes across. No, it makes perfect sense. And
Okay.
I totally know that. It's just the parts of me need much more care and convincing otherwise. But that's just where they're thinking, and they're cool to think what they want to think totally and completely. It's just more or less, it's like that whole observation mode shift from just letting it take place without knowing it's happening to consciously paying attention.
Yeah,
and then
I
from
can
that space, seeing what happens next.
I can feel and see little things shifting and moving around, and then I can see the you that's like doing what you said, is just like watching and observing. And there's definitely a lot of things moving with you trying to do its own work, and some tools are, you know, the old tools that were used that don't work, or, you know, you might not use anymore, and then some are you're still building and you're using those too. I can see. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels good to be seen in that way. Because there are so many parts of me too that genuinely still do feel invisible, and not even just to other people, but to myself. You know, there's so much to find within me. And I know, like, the grand question of the universe is like, who am I? That's what we're here for, to facilitate the knowing of what this all is all about, right? But I feel like I have even more so of a mission for that, because it's like reclaiming what I wasn't able to know about myself in my entire lifetime. So far. So I think that just hearing you say that feels really good, and makes me feel like more hopeful that I can find it.
I see the splits, and I see, you know, I'm not just getting one side of Matthew right now, and I love it. I'm seeing the splits and how vulnerable you are, so I'm able to like feel the different energies, and they'll all have their own different colors and things like that, as they should. And so I was thinking, one more question popped in my head. Do you have time for one more question?
Totally.
Okay. I was thinking, I don't know if we covered this. This is going to be one of those questions where it's more about what you know so far. I think a lot of people might want to know, how do they actually know if they have enmeshment trauma? Where is a pivotal wall that they might hit where they're like, whoa, I'm enmeshed. Like, I don't own myself. How do you think they would know?
They would know based on their dynamic relative, I think, to a few things. Relative to how much alone time do you need? I think that's a huge indication, not just of enmeshment trauma, but also attachment styles. But I think that's a huge like starting point, because if you need a hell of a lot of alone time, it is inauthenticity. You feel like you can't be yourself around people or feel yourself around people. And that's like the main component of it. So I would like watch for how much alone time that you're needing. Watch your push and pull dynamics with other people. Do you feel like you need to, you know, cancel and plan like nothing with people, even though secretly you want to? Are you canceling plans or shifting things ahead, or not even like making plans at all? And then when you're in your alone time, regretting it, or wishing you would have, or know that you want to, but feel like you can't? Do you feel like people are actually getting to know you when you're having a conversation with them? Or do you feel that you're just listening to them and making sure that you're saying all the right things and doing all the right things to ensure a positive reaction out of them?
Absolutely.
Those are probably the main things. Like, how much of a sense of yourself do you have around people?
Absolutely. Wow.
And mapping out what that means for you specifically. I think that can be defined in many ways, but I think that each individual person will know what that means to them when they really feel into it.
Absolutely. Totally. Wow. Yeah. I just thought that was a question, you know, it's kind of like those, you ever get on Google and you just ask like the most baseline question, like, how do I apply a Band-Aid? I feel like you got to cover you got to cover all those questions, because I know when I'm finding out about something new, sometimes I miss that baseline question. I get too involved in like the advanced specifics, and that you just answered the question is like, how do I know? So I think that's really valuable, and it's really good.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so I think, you know, keeping it around these like 6, 7, 8 questions, I think we're good. Is there anything else that you want to address about enmeshment? You know, because I'm thinking that we're pretty good with the set questions that we have, and I'm thinking maybe if we want to, we can also do a part 2 of, you know, something.
Yeah, maybe. I think it would be fun as I kind of figure more out about it. But I just want people to know that like this is so common, actually, and unfortunately, is it common? But you are so not alone in it, and I want people to know that they can reach out if they need any support or have any questions. You can absolutely find me, Matthew Rosewater, on the social medias.
Yeah.
Planetascension.com will be my website if you want to see anything that I have to offer, just to find my contact information. And know that like I'm a big believer in that you come here to teach people how to heal the wounds that you healed. So like a huge part of me is very invested in this also, because I feel like I'm going to help other people with it. So you guys can be damn sure that some type of workshop or course or something about this will be coming out once I get a better grip on it myself. So we're going to figure this out. I don't think that this is fully illuminated with every single area to explore quite yet, but I think it's a huge place to start. And I think the most important takeaway is just to know that it's going to take time. Because that's like one of the harder things for me to accept and digest. Yeah. So I feel like other people that are matched to watching this probably feel the same exact way.
Because you're a fast mover, like I am.
Yes. Very much so. And
you like to get things
done. That's a huge component of this. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And of course, like, yay, contrast. That's supposed to help us, you know, discover more stuff. But it's crappy.
Yeah. You don't get to find out how it ends, when it ends, nothing. You just have to you have to like,
it's like a reference to like you're driving and it's completely dark in front of you and all you can see is like 100 feet that your headlights are illuminating in front of you. You have no idea what this long, scary, dark, shadowy road is going to lead you to, but you just keep going because you know it gets better each time that you get a little bit further. Yeah, but you just never know what kind of unsightly things you might see on the side of the road. But
yeah, one of the things that I share with Julia a lot is I tell her, you know, how do we know what we should do? Well, first we have to find out what we shouldn't do. And it works in all platforms. Like you don't know what you can do until you know what you can't do. Whether that be physically or anything like that. And some things just aren't, you know, for you, and some things are. And the universe teaches us it's the backwards of, in any way the universe can teach you, it's always going to be backwards, like 100%. If you think like step 1, step 2, the universe will be like, nah, dude, it's more like step 19 and then 1. And you're like, that makes no sense.
So it's like you said earlier, just being open to however way it's going to unfold for you, knowing that maybe it's unfolding one way for me, but that might not look like the case for other people. But just like setting the intention to wanting to work on these particular things is enough. Yeah. And then finding ways to be able to work on those things with other humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's like the biggest part of all of this.
That's the biggest part of all the whole enmeshment thing. Like, and relating and being yourself. And really, I mean, being yourself is such a vague term. When you get into the realm of enmeshment, it's like, no, I'm being myself. And it's like, well, are you? And it's like, no,
maybe like a fraction, like 100th of, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And just being willing to know that and to feel that and to accept that, because I think it's also easy to get into like a defensiveness or a resistance about it, and like denial is a huge I've struggled with.
Yeah. Denial and defense.
So it's like a coming out of sorts. With this,
that would be like
sharing it with people.
Trying to tell me I'm not being myself, like I'd be defensive, like within the next response or something. I'd be like, "What do you mean?" What?
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even know. Like it's that subconscious that you don't even know you're doing it.
That's deep.
That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really.
So be willing to look at that would be a huge takeaway as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's scary, but
yeah,
it's worth it from my perspective.
So thank you for mentioning how people can get in contact with you. I'm sure when I post a video, I'll have all the information below, so it's easily clickable for people. And I just want to say I'm so proud of the work that you do with people, and I love, you know, your progression and what you do, and the work that you do with people and the reviews that you have and stuff. And I think you're doing great, but I'm even more proud of the work that you're doing on yourself. I'm really proud and happy to see that. Yeah, it's beautiful to see you being so open and being extremely vulnerable with yourself, like with you, and then crying, you know, letting people know like you do need connection in a way that you didn't have it before, because that's different than just having a bunch of people around you that say that I love you, or you know, act like they love you. So it's just two different things. So how do you feel about everything? Do you feel good to wrap it up and call it? How do you feel?
Yeah, no, that feels perfect. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling a call to tend to some self-care stuff. So this is the perfect amount of time. I think we nailed it, to be honest. I think I hit everything that I wanted to say and more. So I feel very happy with what we put forth today. And I'm very grateful for you, Antoine. Like, I feel so seen. And the fact that you asked me to do this made me feel very important. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, well, you know, Matthew, I look up to you. I don't know if you know that.
Really? I mean, part of me like kind of knew that, but like just hearing that from people still is like a startling thing for me to receive.
Yeah. There's parts of me that when I see you on Facebook and I see your stuff, and I'm just like, if only I could do some stuff like that, you know, like, oh no, you know, I think about that sometimes, but I think that that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but I do feel that way. And I think it's good for me to admit that I look up to you. And I think that it's good for you to receive that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. This is what like relationships are all about for everybody that's watching this. Like, this is how you do it right here. This is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love this.
I'm going to go ahead and we're going to end the meeting. We hope that this helps, and this has been a great interview. So I love you, my brother.
I love you so much.
I'll see you.
I love you. I'll talk to you so soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.